So it's been a while since I've talked about the MCU. I think the last MCU thing I reviewed was... Oh god, I don't even remember. It can't have been Spider-Man No Way Home. No, I definitely... No, Wakanda Forever, that's what I reviewed, okay. Shows how memorable the MCU has been recently. But we finally have the third and final film of James Gunn's Guardians of the Galaxy trilogy. And overall, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a really beautiful conclusion. It's not the best Guardians of the Galaxy. In fact, I think it's probably my least favorite. But that does not stop it from being a really good film. I really did enjoy this movie. When it comes to the previous Guardians of the Galaxy films, I reviewed the first two in like my Marvel retrospective ages ago, back when, this was years and years ago, so I don't actually remember what I said. But my current thoughts on those films are that I really enjoy both of them, and I think Guardians 2 is better than Guardians 1. Guardians 1 is great because it's a very simple story done very effectively, and it also kind of reinvigorated the space opera genre. But Guardians 2 has so much more heart, so much more humor, and just the funeral scene of Yondu is one of my favorite scenes in the MCU. It is beautiful. That Cat Stevens song, father and son, it's beautiful. And when Kraglin sees the Ravager funeral and like the fireworks start going off and Kraglin starts like screaming, it's so good. And whilst we're here, we might as well quickly talk about my thoughts on the Suicide Squad, which I have reviewed, and for the most part, I really did like that film. I enjoyed it a lot. I like Gunn's visual style and visual flair, which he brings into Guardians 3, because Guardians 2 is a very good-looking movie, and Guardians 3 is also a very good-looking movie, but it looks more like the Suicide Squad and Peacemaker than, say, Guardians 2. And I wish there was a little bit of a middle ground between the two, because I love the colors in Guardians 2, but I also like the more filmic look of Guardians 3 and the Suicide Squad, so I don't know. And speaking of DC, seeing as now how James Gunn is the head of DC Studios, I have to say that after watching Guardians 3, I am more reassured about James Gunn heading DC and his vision for DC, and also his vision for Superman Legacy, because although Gunn's sensibilities are very hit and miss for me in the sense of his humor, sometimes his humor is very funny, other times it's very self-indulgent, I think for the most part Gunn will do a good job at making a Superman film, because again, with these Guardian films, when they are serious, when they are dramatic, they hit incredibly well. And so again, I've said this before, I think I said this in my Suicide Squad review or something, but I'd love to see James Gunn play a movie like 90% straight, where it is big, it is epic, but it is also heartfelt and sincere, because James Gunn, the emotions that man can bring to the screen is just beautiful, and Guardians 3 demonstrates that, and I hope he's able to capture that magic with Superman Legacy. But talking about Superman Legacy and James Gunn is a story for another time. Let's talk about Guardians 3. Guardians 3 was great. I'm going to start off with the negatives first, just because I do have a couple of negative things about the film. Most of them are nitpicky-ish, but there were also a couple of moments I felt were a little bit emotionally manipulative, and I felt like was, cheating the audience. First off, I thought Adam Warlock was kind of wasted and was kind of annoying. Like, Will Poulter does a fine job, but his presence on screen was I didn't care for the character. Every time it showed up, I was like, this guy is annoying. Not Will Poulter, the actor, Adam Warlock, the character. The character just felt kind of pointless and irrelevant. Sure, he goes through a nice little arc where at the beginning of the film, he's very destructive, blah, blah, blah. He causes the whole inciting incident of Rocket to be in a coma, etc., and Rocket is dying because of him. And by the end, Adam Warlock becomes a hero, and he saves, Quill and all that. That's fine. It just, I don't know. As a screen presence, the character didn't feel very lived in. He felt very much like an afterthought. Which is kind of annoying because James Gunn did set up that character at the end of Guardians 2. So him being in this movie, you feel like would have been a much more impactful presence. But he's kind of just there. Another thing I have too is the physics. There are a couple of moments in this film where I'm like, what is up with the physics here? Like, I know this is a space fantasy sci-fi thing based on comic books, but in the previous Guardians films, there was also some semblance of science fiction reality in a sense. Like, for example, the vacuum space, they pretty much adhered to that rule for the most part. Like, if an airlock opened, people would get sucked out. And in Guardians 3, there are moments where spaceship windows are broken and none of the characters get sucked out. And there's no anti-gravity in the ship or whatever. None of that. They're just there in the ship fine. And it's like, hold on, wait, that doesn't physically make any sense. Another thing too, and this was probably the biggest issue I had with the entire film, was the consistent use of fake deaths. Now, Marvel Studios, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, is no stranger to the whole fake death fake out thing. That's like kind of what they're known for. A character dies, oh, don't worry, it wasn't really that character, it was someone else. Or, oh no, don't worry, that character's coming back. Or, oh, that character you thought was gonna die, no, they're fine. Here's like another one from an alternate universe, or blah, blah, blah. And going into this film, James Gunn did teased that the Guardians of the Galaxy team that we know will not be the same by the end of the film, and pretty much implied that one of the characters was most likely going to die, and the way the trailer seemed and the way the movie played throughout most of it was that Rocket Raccoon was going to die. But he doesn't die because there were certain moments in the trailer that hadn't played in the film, and I was watching and I was like, okay, Rocket is probably going to be alive or he's going to die at the very, very end, because there are moments in the trailer that haven't played out on screen yet, and Rocket is in those scenes in the trailer, so I'm guessing it's gonna happen later on in the film. Then again, this could have been an Infinity War Endgame situation, but it wasn't. It was just, oh hey, yeah, Rocket, we're faking that he's gonna die, but he doesn't actually die. And then the other fake death, which was Peter Quill, Star-Lord. At first I thought, oh, they're actually gonna kill him, and I actually thought that would have been very fitting and very kind of nice and tragic. But then he's fine because Adam Warlock saves him. And it's annoying too because they genuinely do make you think that Quill is dead because his face starts to expand in the vacuum of space, which kind of then adheres to the whole like weird physics of this film, because again, there are moments in this film where they're like spaceships like burst open and none of them get sucked out into the vacuum of space. But either way, you know, they basically go, yeah, Quill is dead. But then Adam Warlock saves him and all of a sudden, nope, he's fine, he's alive. And it's like, okay. Why? Oh, just a couple of other things I do want to mention since I'm editing the video now, and my thoughts of the film I'm slowly marinating. I do want to see it for a second time, but there are a couple of extra things that, you know, I've been thinking about as the days have gone by, where, you know, this in particular, with Star-Lord's fake out death, the thing that also annoyed me about it too is how conveniently Star-Lord does not have his rocket boots and he doesn't have his helmet from the previous films. Now, in Guardians 2, Star-Lord's helmet breaks, and then in Infinity War and Endgame, Star-Lord has his helmet back. But then in Guardians 3, he doesn't wear his helmet at all. And I'm not gonna lie, it does feel a little bit cheap that James Gunn purposefully didn't address the fact that Peter Quill wasn't wearing his rocket boots or have his helmet or have a new helmet in some way, shape or form, because that was something I never noticed before. But the fact that Quill doesn't have his helmet in Guardians 3 is just weird to me. Because I remember looking at the posters and the trailers going like, why aren't they showing him in his helmet? I'm guessing he's gonna get his newer, more comic accurate inspired helmet in this film. But he doesn't, so in many ways it just feels like James Gunn writing in the fact that, oh, Quill doesn't have his helmet, and, you know, he doesn't have his rocket boots, which would easily write him out of his, you know, predicament at the end of the film where you think he's going to die, because if this was Peter Quill in Guardians 1 and 2, he'd have had his rocket boots, and he'd have had his helmet, and there'd have been no tension. But also, that being said, all my dissatisfaction towards the fake deaths were undone by the ending, because I thought the ending to this movie was very beautiful, and a very nice bow on the Guardians of the Galaxy character arcs. They were all beautiful. Star-Lord going home to see his granddad, going to Earth, finally reuniting with his elderly granddad, was beautiful. Mantis going off to find herself was beautiful. Drax becoming a father-like figure to all the alien children on Nowhere, beautiful. And I loved how he started dancing in the final sequence, because again, the whole trilogy, Drax has been like, I don't dance, dancing is for blah blah blah, I'm all stoic and tough. And then in this movie, he dances because he finally has the warmth and fulfillment of being a father again. It's beautiful. Nebula started off the trilogy as a cold, murderous daughter of Thanos and becomes a warm, loving figure-esque. I mean, she's still kind of mean and all that kind of stuff, but she's just more joyful and happy and affectionate, although, yeah, she's still kind of robotic, but still, it's a very beautiful, nice transition, because Nebula's arc throughout the Infinity Saga was very well done. I love the stuff she went through in Infinity War and Endgame especially, and Guardians 3 continues that trend, and it's beautiful. And Rocket Raccoon, man, Rocket Raccoon being the MVP of this film was great. Drax has always been my favorite Guardian because Dave Bautista absolutely kills that role, but Bradley Cooper's Rocket Raccoon is probably a close second. And this is really his movie. I mean, to be fair, he does spend like 2/3 of the film basically in a coma, dying. But the stuff we see of Rocket, his origin story, the flashback stuff, it was so just emotionally gripping. And it was so well done. The stuff between Lila and Rocket and Teeth and Floor was adorable, but it was also tragic. And then the moment where the High Evolutionary and his goons kill Teeth and Lila and Floor, that hit. That was absolutely gut-wrenching. James Gunn, again, I said this before, when James Gunn really goes in for the gut punch of emotion, he absolutely nails it. And you know what I will say, the stuff with Gamora in this film is cool. I like the idea that they leave it open that, oh yeah, Star-Lord and Gamora may reunite one day, and maybe they'll rekindle their romance in some way, because I think that would be a nice thing to see, because I really liked their romance. I thought it was really well done in Guardians 2 and Infinity War. And then obviously Endgame undoes that because it brings Gamora back, but it's an alternate universe Gamora. And this film, I think, does a nice job of kind of fulfilling that thread. Because that's the thing about Guardians 3, is that it leaves the door open for the Guardians to reunite someday. Dave Bautista says he doesn't really want to come back, but I believe that, if James Gunn was to come back and, reunite them somehow in Avengers film, though I don't know how that'll be possible because James Gunn will be over at DC, the possibility of Bautista coming back as Drax would be nice, but also seeing Chris Pratt come back as Star-Lord would also be really nice, because one of the things too that I really liked about this film was Chris Pratt as Star-Lord. I liked Star-Lord's arc, his idea of, running away from his trauma, and then by the end, he comes back to his childhood home, to his grandpa, to console and, reunite and rekindle his relationship with him. Really nice stuff. And it's also really nice to see Chris Pratt grow as an actor, because one of my tiny little gripes with Chris Pratt in Guardians 2 is because he's great in all these movies. My tiny little issue is that when Yondu dies, emotion-wise, I don't think he entirely gets there. Like, he's feeling sad, but I myself am not feeling that emotion per se. The emotion towards Yondu's death for me comes more at his funeral. Star-Lord's reaction to Yondu's death is a bit underwhelming for me. But in this film, when Chris Pratt has to be emotional, he nails it. Like, when you think Rocket is about to die, I mean, he technically does die for like a second, but when Rocket is dying and Star-Lord starts crying, Chris Pratt starts spitting everywhere, and the tears are in his eyes, I felt it. It was an amazing job. I need to praise Chris Pratt, because I feel like Chris Pratt is the internet's punching bag because he gets cast in so many things, but he is genuinely really great. Even side characters have great little arcs in this film, like, you have Cosmo the Wonder Dog and Kraglin. Kraglin's whole arc with the arrow, and he finally learns to master it by, believing in himself. Seeing Michael Rooker there, nice cameo, I loved all that. And the post-credit scene setting up the new Guardians team was really cool. Seeing Rocket as the leader, Kraglin's there, Cosmo's there, Adam Warlock's there, Groot's there. Okay, that's a nitpick. I don't like the design of Groot in this film. I didn't like it too much in the holiday special, and he's pretty much the same design in this film. I don't like it. Groot's best design was in Guardians 1, and in this movie, Groot doesn't really evolve, he just gets bigger and buffer, and I'm not a fan of it. And the second post-credit scene, I won't lie, I didn't really get. It was just Peter and his granddad just sitting down. Is it supposed to be Peter adjusting to the mundane of everyday Earth life? I'm not entirely sure. But to wrap things up, Guardians of the Galaxy 3 was great. And overall, I think the Guardians trilogy, James Gunn's Guardians trilogy, is very good, and it's probably one of the best trilogies in the MCU. Like I've said, there are times where I feel like James Gunn is a bit too self-indulgent with his humor in the Guardians films, particularly in Guardians 2 and in this one as well. But my defense for Guardians 2 is that, for the most part, most of the jokes land for me in Guardians 2. And again, the emotional core of Guardians 2 is just so powerful. Again, it's so good. And whilst I don't entirely agree with everything James Gunn does as a creative, it is nice to see him explore and grow his filmmaking muscles throughout his journey as a director. From Guardians 1 all the way to Guardians 3, all the films he's directed in between, you can see him grow and learn with every project, and that's really cool. I mean, some of the action in Guardians 3 is really cool. I really like the simulation of the one-take hallway fight, because it is not all in one take. You can tell there is a stitch shot, but it's done very well. And I really like how you can tell that Gunn tried to get as much of it in camera as he possibly could. Like, some of the CG characters you obviously had to do in the computer, but for the most part, Zoe Saldaña, Chris Pratt, whoever is there on set portraying the Guardians and the stunt team, they're all there doing their roles. They're all there doing the choreography, and you can see that. It's cool. James Gunn, to me, is a very interesting director, particularly when it comes to comic book films, because with the Guardians, he has both reinvented them, but also tried to stay somewhat faithful to the comics in a way. Now, I'm no Guardians of the Galaxy expert. I did read like a couple of issues here and there, but I'm no Guardians expert for sure. Most of my speciality in Marvel lies with Spider-Man and Daredevil and some of the X-Men, mainly Wolverine and Deadpool. But yeah, when it comes to Guardians, I read like one or two like spare issues here and there. And for the most part, Gunn very much influenced the idea of the Guardians, or at least the Guardians of the Galaxy that we know now today. But for the most part, he did make up a lot of it. But you can tell that James Gunn loves comic books. The little references he puts in the Guardians films are great. And you can particularly tell that he loves DC comic books because the Suicide Squad is littered with DC Easter eggs. And the thing is that I also forget that James Gunn is a really cool dude. Like, seeing him in interviews, he's so lively, he's so passionate. I can't wait to see him do that kind of stuff with DC because, again, He is a fan, and you can tell he's a fan, but he's also a good storyteller. Like I said previously, I do feel like James Gunn does get a bit too self-indulgent with his humor and his style at times, and so that does me have you like a tad bit worried about Superman Legacy, because again, I want to see him make a film that is more straight than it is, like, you know, comedy. But Guardians 3 to me has really set aside my irrational fear of Superman Legacy. Like, for some odd reason, I keep thinking, oh, Superman Legacy is going to be like super goofy and super corny, and it's going to be like joke, 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 joke. And one thing I do know for certain is that James Gunn is definitely going to bring a heart and soul to Superman Legacy, because I'm not saying Zack Snyder did not bring a heart and soul to Superman, but his movies aren't joyful. They aren't like, yes, bask in the wonder and glory and magnificence of Superman because he is a kind man that we all know and love. He smiles, he's saving cat out of trees and all that. Because again, whilst I would like to see some of that, I don't want it to go overboard to where we're just trying to do Richard Donner 2.0. Because when you try and do Richard Donner 2.0, you get Justice League. But anyways, enough of the DC talk. Guardians 3 was great. I really enjoyed it. And to be honest, I'm curious to see what is going to happen to the Guardians now, because they've established a new team. Quill is on Earth, Drax has gone off, so is Mantis, and so it's kind of like they could come back in the future. But it's weird, I don't know if I'd want a Guardians 4 without James Gunn. Because James Gunn has said he's open to the idea of a Guardians 4, but not for him to direct. He'd have to get someone else to do it. And I feel like it'd be nice if James Gunn handpicked that director to make Guardians 4. Or maybe they just don't make another Guardians film and they just show up in Avengers films or something. But then again, we live in a capitalist society, you know, corporate greed and all that. Disney will definitely try and milk the Guardians franchise in some way, shape or form. Because before I go, one thing I will say that is nice about the Guardians trilogy is that they all feel distinctly James Gunn, which I really like. This is what Marvel needs to do more. They need to let their filmmakers make their films rather than make the films for the filmmakers and just have them show up on set and tell them to, you know, call action and then give them like a little bit of tiny direction and then just go and cut. Because to me, that's what a lot of the Marvel movies now just feel like. They're not getting directors that want to tell a story and have a vision and know how to move the camera. They just get inexperienced, you know, indie directors who have dreams about trying to do this, but then they get micromanaged to the point where their voice isn't heard. But those are just my thoughts on Guardians 3. I really liked it. But what did you guys think of Guardians 3? Let me know in the comments down below. And also let me know, what is your favorite Guardians of the Galaxy film? Are you based like me and think it's Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2? Let me know down there. Like, subscribe, follow me on social media, all that good stuff. Until we meet again, I'll see you guys next time.